do you want to talk about like the DCU DCU implications from this finale, unless you want to talk more about the actual details of the episode itself, because there's some really juicy stuff coming.
Yeah, we kind of talked through the episode and the quote unquote juiciest parts of it already. I think this episode was not really about the show; it was more about the DCU,
Yeah.
and which is exciting for us. It's just that I think our disappointment leans towards this was such a character driven show, and out of nowhere we went to, oh my god, this is potential dark side implications, like great, like Man of Tomorrow villain, big bad potential predictions here. Like it just went total 180. And yes, like we're talking about a show that had multi dimensions, of course, and Lex Luthor was in it. So yes, it had its like through lines, read throughs, but still at the same time, it's like, all right, but it's Peacemaker. This is a D level DC villain. Like it's not Superman.
Yeah. And that's why I think they're also this James Gunn, as much as he talks about like Peacemaker is like a sandbox for him and he can do whatever he wants. He's also using it as a springboard for the DCU and kind of hinting at potential ensemble movies heading forward and what Lanterns may be about. Because Lanterns is described as this show where there is some type of like I don't know if it's paranormal, but there's like a mystery going on, and then you have the tag team of Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan trying to like solve some type of mystery, True Detective style. And there is this operation that is unveiled towards the end of the episode by Rick Flag, exploring the QUC, using Argus to go into these different worlds, and he's trying to find a location in one of these doors where you can have and store metahumans. And this is obviously part of his vendetta against Chris Smith and what happened to Rick Flag Jr. dying at the hands of Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad. But Salvation would be a place where you keep metahumans. They go there, they fend for themselves, and they can't come back to the world that Rick Flag and everybody else is in. And this comes from a comic book run. It is Salvation Run. It's something that James Gunn talked about on his podcast for Peacemaker. And it's something that I'm thinking that you're going to have metahumans potentially start disappearing in the world of the DCU. And you're going to have like Jon Stewart and potentially Hal Jordan noticing metahumans are now going missing and they're trying to get to the root of the issue. I think that's how it could play immediately into DCU implications, especially with the next DCU project. Ricky Flex, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was hoping Lanterns was going to be because like the synopsis is like detective mystery series, Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, the two Green Lanterns for Earth and whatnot, and it's more of an intergalactic story where it like terrestrial story where again it's grounded mystery format, but it's still intergalactic. And again, that's where you get the true detective feels and tone and whatnot, that grounded tone, mature, right? And they're kind of just doing a murder mystery but inside of a larger conspiracy. So it makes sense why where you're what you're saying here, where Lanterns, like the larger conspiracy behind a potential murder, could be maybe, oh, someone going into Salvation and maybe the Lanterns figure that out and then uncover the conspiracy. I was just hoping it was something new and separate almost, just to kind of like not be tied down to anything, especially Peacemaker. But again, we don't know that for sure. That's just, again, we're theorizing.
And the Salvation Run comic book run came out late 2000s. I think it's 2007, 2008. And it's where Amanda Waller and Rick Flag Jr. send supervillains to another planet. And it's known as Salvation. And it leaves the supervillains to kind of fend for themselves. And it's characters like Captain Cold, it's Lex Luthor, it's Joker. It has those villains on a different planet and they have to they try and basically find a way back to Earth. And I'm wondering if this is going to be a really loose adaptation. Is it going to be all metahumans? Is it going to be a mix of heroes and villains that are kept in the QUC, in Salvation, along with Peacemaker? Peacemaker is subject number one. Let's see who else joins him in this QUC. And is there going to be a potential ensemble movie that comes about where you have these metahumans stuck in this world coming back and then maybe enacting revenge on, let's say, a Rick Flag Jr. and an Amanda Waller or whoever is like helping, or Lex Luthor, who's like still working with Rick Flag. We're going to talk about that. and how his role maybe lends into Man of Tomorrow and his partnership with the government. But I think James Gunn has already said that he plans on making a movie with Salvation Run as the heavy influence.
Okay, and that's so interesting too because I think in the comic run, like that was only for targeted supervillains.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like here, again, connecting with Superman that came out in 2025, and what Rick Flag Sr. was saying to the defense secretary or whatever in his pitch about Salvation, he's talking about any metahumans that are just criminals.
And like honestly, Peacemaker, not even a metahuman. He just kind of
Yeah.
he gets thrown into that classification because he worked with the Suicide Squad. He's worked with other metahumans, and it's kind of obviously vendetta by Rick Flag. And you have talk about character driven. That's the proper ending for his character, at least for this season of television. But I think it's going to be potentially a mix of both. And it's going to be something you don't typically see in like superhero ensemble movies is heroes and villains working side by side together. Something we're going to see in Man of Tomorrow as teased by James Gunn. And along with that, I mean, you want to talk any more about Salvation Run before I go into like the Lex Luthor stuff here?
I think we need to bring up a major implication of the Salvation Run. It's the dark side.
I've not read the comic book. Is he a part of the story?
Yes. So Salvation ends up being like a training ground for dark sides, like new gods of Apocalypse. So, and like Desaad, who's like a lieutenant of the dark side, eventually oversees Salvation and whatnot. Again, super villains, right? And they're basically like we see in Dark Side, like the parademons and whatnot, like henchmen, and like them, they fight the villains and they basically determine who are the strongest super villains to kind of go take on Earth. So Salvation is a major implications, as in Salvation and Peacemaker today, into potentially a big bad for the DCU in Darkseid. And for me, that's shocking because obviously the 2020 DCEU failure of Darkseid implication there and whatnot. It seems a little early. And it seems a little early to do it in Man of Tomorrow. But the fact that we're mentioning Salvation, maybe Brainiac is still Man of Tomorrow. That's still my betting favorite, minus odds. But this does open the door for Darkseid down the road. And this is the first time we've seen an implication around it. And I think that's very interesting for James Gunn to do in 2025, right after Superman, and only 5 years after Zack Snyder's Justice League. I just thought that was very interesting that he introduces Salvation so early because of the clear read-through to Darkseid, arguably the biggest DC villain.
I think this will be a loose adaptation, though. I don't know if we can guarantee that that we'll have any connection here because this is a different universe. It's not the same universe on a different planet like it is in the comic book run. And it's not like, I think James Gunn is just fascinated by the concept of it rather than like adopting the full storyline. That's what I'm kind of gaining in terms of him talking about it, the vibe. It's not like you're doing Crisis on Infinite Earths and like you have like not a clear, but you have like something that's beloved by fans that you can follow. It's something more like, hey, this comic book run is not beloved. It's more modern. And it's something where it fits like what James Gunn would direct, that type of project. If it is heroes and villains side by side or anti-heroes, trying to break away from the Salvation case. But also, where else did I want to go? James Gunn said he's going to be directing a Salvation Run inspired movie. I'm really looking forward to not having a James Gunn attached to a DCU project because we've had Creature Commandos, we've had Superman, we've had Peacemaker. And yes, like he's setting foundational pieces for the DCU, but it doesn't feel to me as big as like the Marvel Cinematic Universe yet. Like it doesn't feel as vast. It doesn't feel as expansive. And I think first of all, we need major players. We need bigger characters. Like Superman's like the only big character we have through 3 like DCU projects and Lex Luthor, but we need to have the Green Lantern show up. Like Supergirl needs to happen, and having James Gunn away, like let's just see what this universe looks like with different tones. But I feel like with such consequential things happening, there's not enough like major players we know about yet to really care. That's the vibe I'm getting.
To care, but also to introduce such a major storyline with Salvation, right? I think that's a big problem. And I think that's something that even with Supergirl coming out next year, like Salvation, you mentioned some of the supervillains that are attached in Salvation. Those have not been introduced in the DCU and won't be for years. So to introduce a Salvation right now and to already be talking about a Salvation movie, that just seems very early. You know, that's I can't think of the word top of my head right now.
Premature.
Premature. Thank you. So it seems very premature. And again, I was on board, or I still am on board, I guess, but I was on board when James Gunn said, "I'm doing Superman." You know, set your foundation for your universe, right? Make sure, like, hey, you know what? This is all on me. I'm just gonna freaking do it to start things off right. And you started off with the again Superman, the DCU itself, right? And I'm on board for James Gunn doing Suicide Squad, Creature Commandos, continuing to do Peacemaker, because those are things that lean to his best traits as a writer and filmmaker, and the tone of those, right? But there, there are going to be a time when we need to change things up because the DCU does not want to be like the MCU, where everything feels formulaic and similar and whatnot. And if James Gunn is going to be a part of everything and hands on, that's a problem. And I know obviously he says he's not going to be. We obviously Clayface is going to be something very different. But Supergirl, Craig Gillespie, that and again the little thing that we saw of Supergirl in Superman, that feels a lot comedic tone wise, and also James Gunn. So I just think that we just need other projects outside of James Gunn to kind of form, like, kind of show, like, hey, these are filmmaker led projects, like James Gunn like to say. We're gonna have a diversified set of characters and set of directors and writers here. We haven't gotten that yet, and we're already setting up a huge DC comic book run in Salvation. That just seems again premature to me.
It just seems like he's carved out a little sector of a universe, not an entire like fleshed out one. I know it's only 3 projects, but it's the same ones in tone. Characters keep reappearing in these 3 projects, but we need to see how big it is by looking at other characters and seeing different parts of the world. You know, I feel like we're kind of in one area for most of this, you know, constant, you know, people reflecting on Metropolis. It's people of Lex Luthor's gang that are now carried over into Peacemaker. Lex Luthor himself, like, involved here. We need to see what makes DC so great. You know, it's the worlds that James Gunn described. It's the cities that he describes with Gotham, Metropolis, right? Bloodhaven. Like, we could go everywhere. You know, Star City. Let's go see other places here, and let's get a sense of those different tones you've been teasing. You know, like, I'm excited for the Supergirl trailer because I think that's important to, like, say, hey, this is what this movie is going to be about. This is what's going to feel like. You know, can't wait for the trailer for Lanterns. This is the true detective tone that we were talking about. This is how we're going to execute it. And this is how it looks different from, let's say, Peacemaker. Those trailers are going to be so important, Ricky.
Speaking of that, we haven't gotten a trailer for Lanterns yet. It's October. It's October. This show comes out in 3 months.
Show comes out in January.
Yeah, January. Like, we haven't even gotten a teaser. A teaser. Like, we've had one set photo, right? And again, this is a mystery, so a suspense thriller. I I'm all for not teasing too much, but to not show anything, I'm hoping it's because they don't want to tease too much and, like, give away too much, and or because they were waiting to the end of Peacemaker and kind of the salvation storyline to come about, right? I'm hoping it's for those 2 reasons and not for other reasons why you don't show teasers and whatnot to promote things. And that's usually because, as Disney knows, you want to hide things, right? And don't have, so I'm just
I haven't heard
way too
anything
much hype.
bad.
There's
Like,
way too
no,
much hype for this to be bad. Like Damon Lindelof and whatnot, the people around it, it just can't be. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it is kind of weird. We've gotten nothing from this project.
and DC was not at New York Comic Con this past weekend. And maybe if they were there, they would have presented a Lanterns trailer. Because
Right.
there was so much superhero TV stuff from Invincible to the MCU this past weekend with Daredevil Born Again Season 2.
All
There's
coming in March or later of next year.
Yeah. So I would expect it within the next month. Definitely. Maybe after Task. You know, what's the next HBO show after Task?
Uh, darn. Hold on, let me look.
You got to get the juices flowing a little bit. So maybe after Task, maybe you get a trailer for Lanterns.
Maybe. Yeah, you know what they usually do? I remember Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Like, what they usually do is they throw that trailer before the, like, after the last one or something. Um, Oh well, Welcome to Derry
Oh, it's gonna
premieres.
be after that. Like
Um,
dude, the HBO. Holy, yeah, let's go, let's go. Dairy series looks great. Like I'm excited for that too. I think we might have to mention that a couple times in the podcast. Couple of reactions, maybe finale.
okay, so yeah, Welcome to Derry, the 26th. So that's 2
It'll be
weeks,
some. It'll,
and
it'll
that's
be
Sunday night.
something.
That's Sunday night HBO.
Yeah, I think it'll debut sometime during Welcome to Dairy, and HBO is fucking back. HBO is back.
Is
Yeah,
it might be crazy, like, The Last of Us, like, came out this year, and
yeah,
that is even, maybe not even going to be a top 5 HBO show this year. That is insane.
that is insane. I do want to go to more DCU implications from this finale. I want to talk about Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor is seemingly made this partnership with maybe the US government, but more particularly Rick Flag in terms of finding out about the quantum universe chamber, quantum unfolding chamber, and using what Lex kind of displayed in the movie Superman and Rick Flag leaning on uh, Lex Luthor. You have Rick Flag kind of sucking him off, saying he is the smartest man in the world. We have to utilize what he knows, even if he is a prisoner right now. But I think this type of partnership between Rick Flag and Lex Luthor, it could lead into like maybe Rick Flag leaning again on Luthor when there is maybe some type of attack on Earth for Man of Tomorrow, where like maybe Rick Flag's getting too close with Lex Luthor, and maybe it would lead to an escape from prison. It could lead to, Rick Flag calling on Lex Luthor to aid Superman in doing something. I can just see the remnants of not only salvation, right, that we've talked about, but also just Lex working closer with Rick Flag, pushing Rick Flag closer to the dark side, leading into Man of Tomorrow. I think that could have huge implications as well.
Yeah, for sure, and, like, Rick Flag Senior saying in this episode how, "Yes, I don't like the guy, but we need to use he's the smartest man on the planet, we need to use his brain," basically. That is directly leading into potentially Man of Tomorrow and how Lex and Superman are going to have to team up.
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, if it's Brainiac situation, Superman can't handle something, doesn't have the brains of Lex, right? And like we talked about it before when the Man of Tomorrow announcement happened, it could be like Lex kind of sticking it to Superman, like you need me, right? I have a strength, I have an ability that you aren't able to, execute or achieve, or can't figure this out without me. You need me, and it's the government, Argus, Rick Flag leaning on a dangerous person like Lex Luthor. So I think that could have implications. Also, checkmate is something that's established, which is like like a covert operations, type of, I don't know, agents and stuff. It's like an answer to Argus, but it's the idea of that's been built in through Peacemaker season 2 of like Harcourt will just go towards a mission because she's been directed to complete it. But asking the why are we doing it type of question, that's where checkmate comes in, where they are maybe holding other, government organizations in check, where they are looking at them and saying, okay, you're doing this operation. How is it helping people? That's Economos says that in this finale. Like, what have we ever done that is for the good of the people? That's what checkmate's all about. And I don't know how they fit in. I think they'll have a presence in DCU projects. But I think out of all the things that kind of came forward between Salvation, Lex Luthor partnership with Rick Flag, that to me was pretty tertiary.
Yeah,
Checkmate.
and it's interesting, Checkmate being introduced here because obviously Adebayo, Amanda Waller's daughter, in the comics, Checkmate is an operations agency from Amanda Waller, and it's kind of an affiliation to Task Force X, which includes the Suicide Squad. So it's just interesting how it's a little different than the comics, and it's another example of James Gunn using similar things, like with Salvation, like we talked about with Salvation, not being another planet, but instead multidimensional. Here, not necessarily a Task Force X affiliation here, and straight from Amanda Waller, it's more Amanda Waller's daughter running Checkmate, which is very interesting because my last thing that I was hoping to get out of this season, I think I said it at episode 1 that I was hoping to get an answer to is, another HBO DC show, excuse me, DC show. I'm not positive HBO. DC show we're getting next year is the Waller Show.
I don't think we're getting it. That's been put on the back burner by James Gunn.
So yeah, okay, well that explains a lot then because I was going to say what is going on there because this would have been a perfect situation to kind of like introduce, hey, this is your through line to the Waller show. And we didn't get that, which tells me, okay, what you just said, okay, if that's on the back burner, then that makes sense.
I wonder what you could do with the Waller show. Maybe they're at a crossroads where, like, do we have, because in the Salvation Run comic book, it was the Suicide Squad that I think is putting members on Salvation, like putting metahumans on Salvation, and it's led by Amanda Waller and it's led by Rick Flag. Maybe you could have the Waller show doing that, like using Belle Reve and those resources to take out metahumans, put them in Salvation, or you have like the storyline of Adebayo versus her mother, Viola Davis's Amanda Waller, checkmate versus whatever's going on at Belle Reve and whatever Amanda Waller's in charge of. Like, you could have something, I think, maybe cool there, like a checkmate versus Suicide Squad type of project. But I think that's down the line. Like I said before, you got to establish big players here, like big heroes, and not get too obsessed with the world created with Peacemaker. And I respect James Gunn what he did with an original character like Adebayo, not in the comic books. Like, it's actually insane, like what he's done with that character. And Daniel Brooks is really good, but you got to go away from it for a little bit. What were you going to say? Look like you had something.
No, I agree. And I'm just did a couple quick internet research here. James Gunn confirms the Viola Davis Waller series back in August before Peacemaker started. That's still going on, but because of the 2023 strikes, everything got pushed off, and a couple of DC things had to be refocused, and they had to change up the script. So because other things had to come out beforehand or later and whatnot, so they're reworking the script, but same writers. James Gunn still overseeing the project. Viola Davis still very much doing it, and they said now post Peacemaker season 2. We should be hearing more developments soon on it.
Okay, and as we're going towards the end of these reactions and predictions, forecasting the future of the DCU, when do you think we'll get to see Peacemaker again? Will it be Peacemaker season 3? It doesn't look like that. When do you think we get to see John Cena as the character?
Well, James Gunn confirmed that we'll be seeing him again. And this season, definitely not just with Checkmate, but in the penultimate with his brother in the Nazi world dimension, definitely teasing a potential bad for another season of Peacemaker. So the question is, do we see Peacemaker in a cameo in A Man of Tomorrow if they do Salvation there, or if they do Salvation in Lanterns, or they do Salvation somewhere else? Then for sure we're seeing Peacemaker in that. It's just the question is, do we get an answer to Salvation before Peacemaker season 3?
And it's me. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, but like I feel like we have to, right? Because no way Checkmate is going to be the agency to figure out Salvation, this huge DC comic run. They won't, like, that's way too much, again, leniency on Peacemaker, a D-list villain in DC. They can't do that.
Could Checkmate be working with potentially Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan in the upcoming series Lanterns?
The tones are just so different, though.
Well, this is the huge challenge of the DCU, and like, how is it going to look? How is it going to feel? Is it going to work? But it would make sense if Checkmate was checking, right, the actions of, Argus, and potentially taking of metahumans, putting them in Salvation, if that's exactly what Lanterns is about. I don't know, but that'd be like an example of how I would see Checkmate used in another project. In terms of John Cena, I think James Gunn, he accomplished what he needed to with this season, because he established this as like a legitimate character that not only is just a fun and like farce of a character, but like dramatically pretty grounded. It's got a great performance from John Cena. You want to see him again. Yeah, you established Peacemaker. He went from C to B list, honestly. That's what I think what happened. And then you set up the future of the DCU, right, in terms of the things that we just talked about with Salvation, blah, blah, blah. But I think now you have set up an opportunity for John Cena to be a part of a big, major ensemble DCU movie. And I think that's where you see him next. You don't see him in Peacemaker season 3. These characters have their place. They're set for where they can go in the DCU now. Even like the side characters like Flurry, played by Tim Meadows, like, and Sacha Bordeaux, they're with Checkmate now. And you have Rick Flag established, like, again. But John Cena is going to be one of the people trying to fend for themselves and trying to leave Salvation. That's the next time you're going to see him. And you're going to see him along much bigger name heroes, but he is firmly established as a strong presence in this world. So the next time you see him will be that ensemble movie. I don't know if you ever get Peacemaker season 3, by the way. Like maybe you have the Keith character hanging in the background a little bit. Maybe he finds his way into the QUC. Maybe goes to the world of Peacemaker and he gets thrown in Salvation too. And then he is with Peacemaker and all these other heroes. I can see that happening as well.
Maybe. I think it's Peacemaker. John Cena, again, someone like a Ryan Reynolds, a Deadpool, like they're kind of synonymous now. No one else could really play Peacemaker, in my opinion. John Cena is Peacemaker. That's what it is. And because of that, and because of how much this role is kind of, again, like you said, like you going from a C to a B list, right? And I think that's true, as in Hollywood and in acting. And this season proved that. And I think that James Gunn, like John Cena owes James Gunn a lot of credit to that. And John Cena, no longer going to be in WWE. His return is over. He has like 6 or 7 things in the burner right now, not only in development for post production as well, right? So he's going to be constantly working. He'll always come back to Peacemaker, and I think season 3 will happen at some point. It's just when, because not only is John Cena busy, but he'll always come back. James Gunn has a lot more priorities that he needs to get accomplished, like we talked about over the past hour here, right? With the DCU and with Superman, which he's also the head person at. And with all the other things, with major characters in the DCU that, like Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, core Justice League characters that have not been introduced, not even casted yet. No actors have been casted in those, not even projects being greenlit for those. We have serious things that we need to get done for the DCU, and we need James Gunn's full attention on those, let alone a Peacemaker season 3. So do I see a Peacemaker season 3 over under 2.5 years? I would take the over.